If we get to 160K, the average Bitcoiner is going to be so up on their position that they, in every previous cycle, have sold enough to put a top in. If those models just break, and this is not like a wick to 200 or a wick to 250 and then we come back down. This is like we go to 200, 250, 300 and we stay there. If that happens, that is just another data point that people are just refusing to sell. They're just not letting up. Those passive flows are going to be a real thing. I did a study on all the 13F filings, and it was it's crude numbers, but I was just looking at how big the institutions are versus how much they've allocated. And there was a couple of very clear trends, but the one that really stood out to me, there's a couple of funds that are very small, right there on the $100 million size or less in terms of their AUM. A lot of those guys were 5%, 10%. Some of them were 100%. These are like obviously Bitcoin only hedge funds. They've got a 5% position, so on and so forth. But they were all very small. You go to the other end of the curve and you've got the behemoths, the $1 trillion, the $100 billion AUM firms, and they've got 0.01% as an average allocation. So if you do 0.01% times 100 billion or times $1 trillion, us as individuals can't wrap our head around how big that, you couldn't spend that if you tried. What if they go from 0.01 to 0.02 or 0.05 or 0.1? The numbers just, you can't actually fathom how big they are. And a lot of people talk about market manipulation and derivatives and all this kind of stuff. I actually wrote a piece called Paper Bitcoin, which is one of my favorite pieces that I've written so far. And my case was, without deep and liquid derivative markets, these institutions can't allocate. If you can't hedge $1 billion worth of risk, you can't put $1 billion position on. So by these derivative markets developing and getting bigger and deeper, that 0.01 can actually start to climb. The more that the derivative space gets bigger, the more money they can allocate because they can hedge the risk. So without derivatives, we actually can't go higher. Retail got us to 2 trillion. It's hard to see retail getting us to 10 trillion. But then you look at the size of this money and you're like, okay, now I can make a case for getting up to 200, 300, 500 million.
Looking to buy Bitcoin the right way? Enable your independence with Bitcoin Well, the fastest and safest way to buy Bitcoin on-chain or via the Lightning Network in Canada and the USA. Head to bitcoinwell.com/BTC sessions and sign up today.